so far is how the Metaverse is a real game changer for creators, is a real game changer for the user interaction. Quite central to all of that, of course, is the interaction with our digital assets. If you're going to spend hundreds, if not thousands, on digital Nikes, you will want to know what it is that you're actually acquiring, what can you do with that, what can't you do with that. There is as this frontier is developing, different organizations, different projects are going about it in very different ways. We've heard the various legal questions being asked around IP ownership and standard setting in this space, and we understand, of course, that it's a moving feast. But to maybe before we start jumping into the questions, if I could maybe ask the panelists to introduce themselves, and you will see that all three of them are coming at this from very different angles. Maybe, Alex, if we start with you.
Hi, thank you. Alex Batlin, founder and CEO of what was called Trustology, and post-acquisition Bitpanda custody now. We are a crypto custodian. We help people to secure their digital assets, whether it's Bitcoin, Ethereum, or a bunch of other tokens out there, and we also allow folks to then invest those assets through our wallet in a secure way. We're what's called DeFi capable wallet, which means you can use decentralized features such as decentralized exchanges, borrowing and lending platforms, and so on. So obviously kind of digital assets can be represented in many different ways, but one of the more emerging technologies is called NFTs, non-fungible tokens, really a digital record of ownership on a decentralized database protected by private keys. And we protect the private keys, and therefore we protect those assets from loss or theft.
Thank you very much. Nathalie?
Good. Hi, I'm Nathalie Oestmann. I am the Chief Operating Officer at Outlier Ventures. We're an accelerator, been around since 2014, and have over 180 companies in our portfolio. Esther, who was here earlier, is one of our portfolio companies and one of our favorite founders, by the way. Love what she's doing. So we've recently scaled. We're now planning on having about 50 companies every quarter going through our accelerator. We do focus on anything that is Web3 and Metaverse oriented. I'll get into that a little bit more, but that's us, Outlier Ventures.
Hey everybody, my name is Sam Huber. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Landvault. We are today the largest construction company in the Metaverse. So we help brands and IP and anyone really who wants to enter the decentralized Metaverse to acquire land and then build experiences on top of that land. I have a background in gaming. My company before AdMix was a in-game advertising platform which pivoted into the Web3 and Metaverse earlier this year by acquiring a studio and rebranding into Landvault. And since then, we've done about 200 projects for brands like MasterCard, Heineken, L'Oreal. We're starting to do government project in Abu Dhabi with the Yas Island Museum of the Future and so on. So effectively replicating a lot of this real estate in the virtual world and also building all the engagement model and making sure that the Metaverse is a fun place to be. On top of that, we build also technology to help monetize those experiences. So how do you actually get value from users who visit the Metaverse?
Fantastic. So maybe to just kick us off, as I said, one of the sort of popular claims that we're hearing is the Metaverse being a game changer for creators and for those who wish to acquire and hold and trade digital assets. Nathalie, maybe if we start with you, what's your view on that?
I mean, this is all of Outlier Ventures' investment thesis, actually. We are going to invest in an open metaverse. So there's two, we heard earlier, there's two metaverses. I call them closed and open, or centralized or decentralized. We like to focus more on the decentralized, although we are open on the closed. We want it to be open in terms of protocols. Choose the protocol that you're going to work on. So we do want this to be on the blockchain. We're open on the infrastructure, and we believe in an open payment system as well. So we want, because we believe in this creator economy, right? So at the end of the day, if it is built on the blockchain with some digital assets, which Alex just said, is a lot of different things. It's not just an NFT. There's a lot of different types of digital assets. And so if you're building this in this open environment and you have interoperability, you can own that asset. You can own the content you might be creating. You can own, let's say if it's gaming, the success that you're having or contributing to in that game. So that's what we believe in.
Yeah, you said it. You said it well. I mean, I think what's exciting about the metaverse and Web3 is that we are shifting from an attention economy on the traditional internet, where attention of users is basically the commodity, to more like the ownership economy, where users actually get to own pieces of that internet, whether they create it or whether they want to invest in it. So in the metaverse, for example, you can buy virtual land, or you can buy a token, or you can buy assets. And the beauty of that is that if you believe in the platform, like the Sandbox, for example, or Decentraland, you can own a piece of that, just like buying stock of a publicly traded company. But it's much more accessible. And so the beauty of that is when the platform does well, you also do well because you own a stake of it. Whereas with Facebook, most people here would use Facebook, but they do not own shares of Facebook. So Facebook grows to a multi-billion-dollar company. The users are not necessarily better off.
They're now Meta.
That's true. I forgot about that. No, but that's what's exciting, right? Everyone basically with this new economy, people are becoming shareholders or investors in this new phase of the internet and not just spectators. And for us, it changes everything. It changed our unit economics of the company, going from a Web2 advertising company last year to now building in Web3. Our unit economics have been completely changed, and that's because of the beauty of Web3 and the fact that we can own the assets that we create and actually have a stake in the future of the internet.
Alex?
I guess kind of for me, I look at it as almost what are rights? So normal Web 2.0 is controlled by somebody. If you want an account to use Facebook, you need to have an account. To use something else, you need an account. Somebody has to permission you to have an account. Now, you might not mind that, or you might do, because they may choose not to give you that account. Crypto twisted all of this. They said, actually, nobody needs to give you an account. You create your kind of unique key. That is your identity. Nobody can take that away from you. It's your right. And that's both scary, because if you're kind of like a regulator, it's like, oh, but we're born. Nobody gives us the right to be born. We're just born. And in the same way, digital identity through cryptography allows you to be digitally born without having to ask for permission. That's really empowering. That's really important. So once you understand that cryptography gives you the ability to have the right to be born without permission, and you're empowered that, then the rest is, what kind of world do you want to live in? Do you want to live in a world that's controlled by an authoritarian Zuckerberg? Or do you want to have a world that is open to everyone and everyone has an equal footing in that? And that's what we're building. We're building a world that everyone has the equal right to participate and contribute to. And that's really, really empowering. So to me, the metaverse instinctively comes together with the kind of crypto side, because frankly, if I'm going to live in a digital world that's in addition to my physical world, I want that world not to be authoritarian. I want it to be egalitarian. So that's kind of my probably biggest driver, fundamentally why it's important for me.
And maybe just and that is sort of as a vision, I totally buy into that, and I see that this is where we're heading. I guess in the interim, maybe Sam, maybe just starting with you. If I'm buying as a user, I'm buying a plot of land. Is that the basic trade for me that I am now? Am I tied into your project? Am I buying that piece of land in your project? Am I tied into the success of whatever that project is? or is it essential for me, and I guess essential for the success of the metaverse and the vision that we're describing, that right asset that I'm buying will potentially outlive a failed project?
Yeah. So the theory is that if you own an NFT, it then belongs to you. It's part of your wallet, right? And the platform that are issuing land, the land, each piece of land, which is a fraction of the map, actually is now in your wallet. You actually own it. But in practice, if you can't build on top of it because the platform is dead, you will still own the NFT, but the utility will be zero because you won't be able to develop it. You won't have anywhere to put this land on. So what we need to solve that is the idea of interoperability, so that you can actually reuse that piece of land in another platform. So when platform A dies for whatever reason, you still have your land, you can still develop it because the tools are compatible, and you can publish that within another platform. At the moment, we're not really there yet. Most platforms actually are building kind of separate worlds, even though the underlying infrastructure, the blockchain, does allow interoperability because it's all on the Ethereum blockchain. From a visual standpoint, from a utility standpoint and tools, this is not available right now. However, I don't think this is actually a barrier to entry. Like, obviously, we do want interoperability eventually, but just like right now, if you go on TikTok and you have 1 million followers, you cannot migrate those to Instagram easily. These are completely different worlds. This didn't prevent these two platforms from growing. So I still think that metaverse platforms can grow independently while somehow they work on interoperability. But then the question becomes, do they even have an incentive to become interoperable? Does the biggest platform have any incentive to open up to smaller platforms, which is a different question.
I guess I think there's also a fundamental misunderstanding of the utility of the NFTs and actually the blockchain. There is no single operator of a blockchain. There's 10,000 or 100,000 nodes. So you're not at risk of a single supplier deciding that they can't be bothered to operate it. There is no risk of a single supplier going and saying, you know what, I'm going to change the rules and I'm going to block your access to it. So once you have Decentraland or something similar up and spinning, you now have a much higher level of assurance that unless 10,000 node operators decide not to cooperate, and that's fine, but the probability of that is a lot lower than a single service provider doing that. You have much higher guarantee that what you have is going to last. Once you accept the fact that a decentralized approach is potentially better and superior, it gives you high levels of guarantees of sustainability and your rights to be encoded and enshrined into programming languages and upheld by 10,000, 100,000 nodes, which is really powerful. Then you need to say, okay, well, how do I manage rights? And this is when NFTs comes in. Yeah? NFTs are just records. They just happen to be on a decentralized blockchain. And therefore, what we're doing is creating a very different promise to what a centralized metaverse does. And therefore, in my opinion, the probability of that surviving long term is much, much higher. And you're enshrining your rights in a collection of individuals rather than a single company. And I know which one I would like to go for.
I guess I'm going to add to the excellent points you've made. What we're seeing at Outlier, just from the almost 200 companies we have, we are focused on interoperability. There are a lot of companies that are focused on stitching this together. So to allow avatars, or let's say the beautiful house you may have built in, a certain land to go to another land. So there are a lot of people who are thinking about this in terms of how you might be able to do that transfer. And another part of it is zero knowledge protocol or proofs. And that is about your identity, because as you enter from land to land to land, or let's say from a world into different metaverses or experiences, how do you avoid yourself having to sign in and set it all up over and over again? And there has been something that's been developed where zero knowledge proof is, there's a question out there that only you are able to answer, but they don't really ask you what the question is, but you give the answer, and that's how they can tell it's you. It's a very smart way of not giving away the question or giving away the answer, but knowing it's you. So there's a new way now of telling your identity. So once you've given your identity once, maybe you've done KYC, you can then start traveling in a very different way with your identity. And that's one of our newest cohorts. We have 8 companies working on that in very different ways. So that's really exciting.
Very exciting indeed. Can I, and maybe this is just the lawyer talking and banging on about rights and understanding what the terms and conditions are that people are signing up for. Is that in your practical experience, how much do you see your users who granted will be very early adopters and will probably be more excited about the project itself rather than the underlying rights? Do you see a lot of probing? Do you see questions around your underlying terms and conditions? Question 1. And question 2, are there sort of good market standards that you can point to, or good examples of how projects have been put together where you say, yes, that works, and that should be the sort of an inspiration and a standard for others?
Given that we have the companies, we don't deal with them, I'm probably less likely to answer that fully.
I guess I can't speak to the metaverse per se, because I help people look after their crypto assets. But we help people look after the keys, and those people then have assets on blockchains. Blockchains don't have T's and C's. There is no T's and C's for Bitcoin. There's no T's and C's for Ethereum. Yet we're seeing institutional adoption, which is kind of weird, because you kind of think, why would institutions who absolutely love T's and C's would be doing stuff without T's and C's? And actually, there's good reason why people are starting to get comfortable with it, because one of the main reasons you have T's and C's is to write down what people should be doing, correct? Because we rely on people to do stuff for us. And people are a bit they sometimes forget, sometimes they just lie, sometimes they do all sorts of stuff that they shouldn't be doing. Blockchain's a bit different. There is no people. Well, people write the code, but once the code's been written, that code is everything that you need to do is written in code. There is no human component to it. It's a fully automated system. Therefore, all conditions are written in code and then executed by many people. So, what are the failures, modes? Humans doing the wrong things. There's no humans. Code replaces the humans. And somebody could execute the code incorrectly, but with blockchain, you have 10, 20,000 different nodes, all kind of participating to execute the same code. So it's a self-correcting system. So once you think about it, actually, there is T's and C's. There's just T's and C's are expressed in code. And because we're so sure that the code was going to run correctly, you don't need traditional T's and C's. So sorry about that.
There goes the neighborhood.
Yeah, I'm exaggerating a little bit.
Of course.
Yeah, no, when we help get big IP like a MasterCard or Heineken or whatever big brand into the metaverse. We're doing right now a big project with a Formula One team, and the whole legal aspect is actually really important, more around how their IP appears and stays on the blockchain. In this case, they actually have a partnership with a different chain, so minting anything that is their IP on another chain is not permitted by that partnership. So there's just a lot of things around. Even though the contracts handle that, there's still lawyers around it that are looking at making sure that the IP is being preserved. And because there is no real rules, it's actually really complicated, and everything is pretty much bespoke. So one thing that we're doing is we are building a protocol, some technology, to kind of abstract that and put that thing on chain as well. So the process of finding a creator, matching it with someone that has land to get a project off the ground, all of that could be handled on the blockchain in a trustless way, so that you don't need to have any kind of email paper contracts.
The one thing I would...
So you still have a job for the time being.
And then what I would add is that everything is ultimately traceable, right? So you can trace if some things or bad actors have come into place and things have happened. So, that's the other thing, yeah.
Maybe just one before we open up to the floor. In terms of exciting developments, what comes next? Is there anything that you can point to, maybe Nathalie, that you're seeing in the companies that you're speaking to in terms of developments for digital assets?
The exciting thing that we're doing at Outlier Ventures is we're actually doing a lot of collaborations with Web 2 companies that want to incubate and learn about Web 3. So one of the ones we've just launched and we have a cohort for is Farfetch. Farfetch, for the non-fashionistas, is basically an online marketplace for Gucci, Dolce & Gabbana, all the great high net, expensive brands. And they have a strategy, well documented, that they want to move into Web3 because they realize that there's a lot that they can start doing in the metaverse. And now they have a bunch of companies that they are incubating and accelerating with us that they can then use with their brands. So, so they'll have, I'm sure the next phase will be a metaverse for Farfetch. And so we're going to be replicating that. We have a lot of interest from a lot of companies who just see the power of testing this out, and why not see these small emerging companies? So that's what I'm really excited about.
Fantastic. Alex, maybe?
I guess I was at World Economic Forum about 2017, and there was a Ukrainian talk about the fact that Ukraine was looking to put their real estate onto blockchain because they're worried about an invasion. Yeah. And apparently, for instance, when Poland was invaded by the Nazis, the first thing they did was destroy the land property records. And there are people still to this day, Jewish families, trying to get their assets back that were stolen from them. Having a system that is global in nature and is super resilient from a record-keeping point of view, which is almost impossible to destroy, I actually think has huge benefits, because once the trouble is over, rebuilding is so much faster if we can get back to a certain knowledge base that might have been destroyed otherwise. So I think there's massive social good for us to be able to rebuild that. And whether or not this is going to be trouble from warring nations or climate change, which we know is coming, being able to have an extremely resilient data record for us to be able to recover quickly and move forward and deal with the change we're about to happen and be happening to us, I think it's going to be super important. It's not very exciting, it's not fashion, but I think it will feed people and will preserve our way of life and enhance it forward. So I think this is incredibly important.
Yeah, I think for us, the title of the panel is Digital Assets in the Metaverse. So we need more content in the Metaverse to give people a reason to actually go there. So for me, what's exciting is to see the technology that is now starting to be built to accelerate the creation of this content and to democratize access to more people to actually build in the Metaverse. We've done some analysis, and an average project to build something for a client, it takes about 6 weeks, and it costs about $15,000 just in procedural costs, as we call it. So it's legal costs to make sure that the developers are doing the work and are getting paid on time, account management, all the stuff around the actual creation. That's expensive, and that takes a long time. And so for the individual creator, it's very prohibitive. It's too expensive. Imagine if it cost $15,000 to create a website. The rate of progression of the internet would have been a lot slower. So we are building tools, and a lot of others are also building tools to democratize access to the metaverse, to make it easier and cheaper to actually build those experiences. So we can get more content out there, which will give more reasons for people to come and more reason for people to actually have digital assets and create true utility for their assets. So to me, this is the inflection point that becomes really interesting.
And to be honest, when you make that reference to building a website, I remember those days, and 15,000 is probably not that long ago when it did cost 15,000. So it's certainly something.
You had to spin up your servers. You had to build your own payment gateway. Like building an e-commerce platform in 1997 probably cost $1 million. And now you can do it for free because the building blocks are there, and you can just plug a few things together, put Stripe on top of AWS, and that's it. You have your website. So this is what the metaverse needs to truly democratize access to the next 100 millions of creators.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. If I can open this up to the floor, any questions for our panelists?
Thanks. You mentioned about how to make the metaverse more fun, to bring more people into it. So my experience so far of like trying out metaverses and researching them has been quite empty spaces full of brands, full of like people just kind of wandering around, dipping their toes in. I think a previous panelist mentioned, you know, someone spent 27 minutes in a fashion store. Like that to me isn't real engagement at a consumer level. So what things do you really want to see in the metaverse experiences to make them more exciting and engaging? You know, from my background as like a youth with a misguided spent teenage life, I spent a lot of time playing video games, and they were, you know, built to engage the user. They've got people sat in Activision Blizzard that their whole purpose is just to build engagement and make it fun. I'm not seeing that in the metaverse. So what are you hoping for? What are you building? What are clients asking for?
Yeah, you got your answer there. I mean, we need to learn from gaming, because the gaming industry has shown that if you create something fun and engaging, people are going to spend literally billions of hours there, and also, you know, spend money in the experience as well. So the playbook is there, right? The question is not, do people like to spend time in digital environments, because gaming has already proven that. But a lot of companies building metaverse platforms kind of approached it from more the financial angle of, let's sell land, let's sell NFTs. And this is up to us, the builders that are building on top of these platforms, to actually create fun, engaging experiences with the tools that we have that are available to us. So, our company, Landvault, we say we're a construction company in the metaverse, but we have 180 game developers that are actually building fun, engaging experiences, designers, asset builders, and so on. So building an exciting metaverse is basically building an exciting game. You need fun game mechanics. Yes, you can layer off the blockchain, the monetization model and everything, but that's not going to attract people in the first place.
If you have an asset in the blockchain, you've obviously got a record in the blockchain saying you own this thing. As I understand that record is effectively pointing you to some sort of locator, whether it's a URL or some pretty old school connecting thing, which is then directing you to somewhere like a website or a company. So while the blockchain is absolutely got 10,000 nodes and all that stuff in, how solid are all those other connections? Because I've certainly heard stories of cases where those URLs have failed or the company they're pointing to have failed. And so actually, we talk about owning an asset, but it's not ownership in quite the way that perhaps a lot of people would think. I mean, have I misunderstood it? And if I haven't misunderstood it, how do you make that more solid? Because otherwise ownership doesn't mean what people think it does.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think that loads of really implementations. If you're going to create some form of asset, if you just have an NFT, but really you could have just recorded in a central database, doesn't matter, because it doesn't guarantee anything. On the other hand, if your entire engine for your decentralized world is based on the blockchain itself, and therefore it only operates, and effectively the data layer for your decentralized world is the blockchain, there isn't a separate centralized data layer for the decentralized world, the blockchain is the data layer, and then the NFTs are embedded into it, then it makes huge amount of sense. NFTs devoid of the operating system being based on the rules inside the blockchain become less valuable, because then it's a soft link, and therefore really it's not functionally a requirement. It's a bit of a gimmick, frankly, in many cases. Unless, of course, you just want a very persistent record. The one you very specifically talked about is usually the GIFs or GIFs, whatever you want to call them. There's IPFS, which allows you to distributedly store stuff. There is Storm, there's Filecoin, various other things that you can use to ensure that your data is decentralized. But I think a lot of people basically just do NFTs for publicity. It's a gimmick, and it's not embedded into the operating system of a particular world, and frankly, don't buy them. You're wasting your money.
What's funny about that, though, is like a lot of those platforms, even though they are decentralized, are actually hosted on AWS. So, there are companies like Kudos that are doing fully decentralized hosting. But right now, most of the metaverse, even NFT project, they are all hosted on centralized databases, mainly Amazon. So, there's always a point of centralization somewhere, which is definitely moving down. But if you look deep in most projects, you will still find something.
And that's sometimes okay. You have,
it's a process. Yeah,
it's a process, but I think a lot of it is just gimmick right now.
Right.
Hi. So, I mean, Nathalie was speaking about zero knowledge proof and the technology behind it, and I think that's going to be revolutionary for decentralized identity and just seemingly going into platforms and metaverses. And I know we've seen Jack Dorsey speak about Web 5 with Xeon, and I mean, there's a lot of
right?
Sorry?
It's gone, right?
Yeah. but I mean, there's a lot of talk about the ownership of digital goods and the monetization around it, and the blockchain being all about economic incentives. My question being, what do you see the metaverse in 5-10 years? I know we have someone in custody, someone in the investment side, and the other in the builder side. I just wanted to understand, what is your view of the metaverse in 5 to 10 years?
I mean, we're investing for that open metaverse that's interoperable. So I definitely, at the speed that we're going at, and with the amount of companies that we're seeing that are actually building something that I can see that when they come out of our accelerator, they are getting investment, they continue to build, they're getting the traction. I see, and now with the Web 2 companies who are coming in and they want to be part of this, I say 3 to 5 years, not 5 to 10. So I'm very clearly bullish on it.
I mean, for us, it really comes down to the users, right? If the users are, right now the users are in the Web 2 platforms and the Web 3 platforms, the Sandbox, Decentraland, there's a lot of builders, lots of activity, and the user base is growing, but it's still a fraction of the other platforms, the more traditional social media platforms. So we need to give a reason for users to go there in the first place. When the users are actually migrating, then this is going to create an economy for builders, for everyone. Everyone is going to have a self-sustaining economy. So I think if users right now in Web3, there's still the onboarding, logging in, having a wallet is still, there's some friction there. But the actual economics of it, once you start owning a piece of land or some assets, and these assets are being used, obviously there was a bull market, before, but we've seen assets growing from $50 per land parcel to $20,000, and people got rich of that. People that own land early on. So the economics of it are very much in the favor of the users. Now it can go down as well, but you can benefit from the upside in Web3. So I think when the audience realizes that, this is when they're actually going to migrate heavily towards those Web3 platforms. They will have a real reason to go there. And when that's the case, then it's going to be more and more difficult for Web2 platforms to compete. It's like you have a workplace that pays you 10 times the salary. Eventually, they're going to attract all the workers, right? That's kind of how I see Web3 versus Web2.
I guess for me, virtual reality has to be, that would be the reason for me to move. That's just a personal opinion, but I remember playing with Second Life. I thought, man, this is rubbish. Then you put on Oculus and you can connect it to Second Life, and I thought, well, this is just that much more immersive, and it's pretty cool. Still got bored after a while, but I think as we get the headgear so much lighter so that it becomes less encumbersome and the fidelity of the graphics better, especially as we're going to have to travel a lot less. We know that that's coming. The carbon footprint on current traveling is just impossible to maintain. We have to change lifestyles. Therefore, kind of virtual tourism is going to be the thing that people are going to be doing. Escapism is going to be a requirement. So I think we need to have the digital immersion to be much deeper and much lighter, and then people will just naturally come to it.
To your point about decentralization and the blockchain helping with that, to what extent do you think there's a danger in the future of centralization with all these companies like Meta who have, a large share of the market at the moment and the resources to try and maintain them? Where do you think the dangers are with that, with them trying to, take over other places, merge, try and get that, maintain the relevance that they've got now? Do you think there's any kind of dangers in that, or do you think, I'm saying dangers because I'm pro decentralization, obviously, but where do you see that going?
We do talk to Meta. I think sometimes when you're really big and you have really big ambitions, it can create barriers because of your own internal workings. As we've seen from what's come out so far, it's been bland at best compared to the things I'm seeing, which are just mind-blowing and amazing. And earlier you talked about, your avatars that you can have and how you can represent yourself in different ways. And, I think that's amazing. That's the world I'd want to be in. And so I'm not particularly worried.
MSN, CompuServe, AOL, remember those?
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, Mark's doing great service. He's paying for a lot of people to learn how to code virtual realities, and those people will leave and create much better experiences. So thank you.
You mentioned KYC. How important is KYC from a metaverse perspective? I know how important it is in Web 2, but is it being prioritized enough so that we trust it? Or is it kind of free for all at the moment so that people that have the money and have the ability can buy everything, and then it becomes Web 2 basically, because by the time we can access it, it's all been bought?
You want to start or should I? I'll start because I'm a payments person, so by background, so it's very near and dear to my heart. Look, for the on-ramps or the off-ramps, you definitely need the KYC. So there's a fiat to crypto exchange, and there are some rules in place. So from that very starting point, there is a KYC. If you're already in the crypto space, I think that's maybe a challenge that we have to catch up with. Who are these people, and how do we get them to do the KYC? But the regulators are going to be all over that. They will want to know at origin who is that person to avoid problems. But
I mean, it's so interesting, isn't it? Because the government still allow cash. So there is an acceptance that certain things, for now at least, don't need KYC. The question is how much. So I think as a society, Web3 is almost irrelevant, or kind of metaverse. We need to decide the right balance between protection and freedoms. It's a really difficult one. In the crypto space, it tends to be towards the kind of extreme end of the zero protection. I think something like zero knowledge proofs is actually probably the technical solution, because it allows us to have pseudonymous identities, but ones with verified by kind of proper authorities claims. So you can say, are you 18? Are you a sophisticated investor? And so on, without revealing your identity. So I think it's really, really important that we find the right balance. If you look at GDPR versus KYC, actually it's almost incompatible. So there's a lot of issues even today with traditional space, and crypto potentially allows us to kind of have technical solutions to things we've never been able to solve for. So zero knowledge proofs with pseudonymous identities is as good a bet as I have seen yet to possibly get the right balance.
If we can maybe put our hands together for our panelists. This was very much.